With all of these crazy camera releases happening this year, Panasonic thought it was about time they showed their cards. But they have played a slightly different hand than their rivals. Today, we are looking at the latest mirrorless camera from Panasonic, the S5. Panasonic released the GH5 back in 2017, and it has become a staple for videographers wanting an incredibly feature-rich camera with great image quality and robust internal codecs, especially for the time it was released. The S5 is not meant to be a replacement for the GH5, but kind of like a weird mashup of the GH5 and Panasonic's flagship mirrorless camera, the S1H. We looked at the S1H in August 2019, and we loved it. And since then, it has cemented itself as one of the go-to cameras for people wanting a no-compromise mirrorless video form factor camera. The S5 is going to be priced at $1,799 for the body only, and $1,999 with the kit lens, which is the 20-60mm. This puts it in the same market as the A7 III, X-T4 and EOS R. For the extra £200, I would 100% grab the 20-60 with the camera, as it bats way above that price point. It has a great range for a full frame camera, it's small, lightweight, and has decent image quality. The S5 is kind of like a baby S1H. It draws influence from its specs and the menu, but it takes the form factor and the articulating screen featured from the GH5. But how does the image look? Well, let's take a look. We've been lucky enough to have this camera for quite a while, so we've actually managed to get this camera onto a few different projects. First of which was with the R5 at Intergalactic Custom Shop. We shot all of these clips with the Vazen 85mm t2.8 1.8x full frame anamorphic prime. This was all shot internally and was a mix of the regular UHD modes as well as the anamorphic formats. The image looks really nice, and the stabilization, considering how big and heavy this lens was, works really well, and we shot all of this handheld. We also took it down to Malay Mile, an awesome motorcycle event in Kevington Hall, to capture some footage from the day and see how the S5 performs with both stills and video. We shot on a mix of the Sigma 1.4 ART series primes and DZO 20-55 and 50-25, which we recently just reviewed. The image out of the camera is very good for its price. We shot a lot of this externally to our Ninja 5, as well as some high frame rate stuff internally, all in Vlog. I wish we had a cage for this camera, as the rig I put together for it wasn't the best ergonomically. This was a good use case though for dynamic range, as the sun was very bright throughout the day, and it's really impressive how good the highlight roll-off is for a camera of this price point. This kind of event is also a use case that this kind of camera would be used on. There was a bunch of filmmakers and photographers at the event using a mix of mirrorless cameras. We also had one battery for the entire day, so I ended up using a 15,000 mAh USB power bank in my pocket and running a USB-C cable to the camera. And this actually worked really well and kept the camera going all day, and I ended up finishing the day on around 30% left on the battery, and I did forget to plug the USB-C cable in sometimes. I pretty much manually focused the entire time, which was made easier by the Ninja 5. The camera got very dusty, but didn't skip a beat. A quick wipe down when we finished, and it was good as new. Mirrorless cameras of this size are great for capturing moments without being a massive distraction. I could keep moving and shooting, but anyway, let's have a look at the camera a bit more in-depthly. camera is much smaller than previous S series cameras. As you can see here next to the S1H, it's so much smaller. It feels incredibly well put together, and when I first picked it up, I was surprised at how much it weighed, coming in at 714 grams with a memory card and a battery in the body. It's not exactly a heavy camera, it just feels dense because of how small it is. On the front, you have the same L mount featured on the rest of Panasonic's S series cameras. This mount is great like other mirrorless mounts because of its short flange. This means you can use either some of the fantastic but expensive native L mount lenses from Panasonic, or adapt a huge range of other lenses onto the camera. Talking about lenses, Panasonic have also announced their upcoming lens roadmap, which consists of a 24 f1.8, 35 f1.8, 50 1.8 and 85 f1.8. This is great to see. However, if you do want to pick up some native L mount primes, Sigma offer their fantastic Art series range in L mount. However, does going native make sense when you can adapt EF? Well, we'll take a look at the autofocus test in a bit. As well as the mount, you have a depth of field preview button that you can rebind, and a surprisingly thick grip for a camera of its size. I do wish, however, that there was a tally light on the front, but alas, there isn't. On the top, you have a stills mode dial for the different drive modes, a hot shoe that will work with accessories like the DMW-XLR1, which is a pretty key accessory if you're planning on shooting video with the S5, or any other mirrorless Panasonic camera that works with it for that matter. Next, you have a mode select dial, which has a movie mode and slow and quick mode, and 3 custom modes which you can set. You then have 2 dials for controlling exposure, and then a range of buttons including the shutter button, record button, white balance, ISO and exposure compensation, all of which are rebindable. I do wish the mode dial had a lock on it, but it does require some force to turn, which is good. On the bottom, you have the battery compartment, which houses the DMW-BLK22 battery. I'm not sure how I feel about a new battery. I do wish they just used the DMW-BLK19E, as I know a lot of people already have invested into those batteries. But this new battery is slightly bigger at 2200 milliamps versus the 1860 milliamps of the BLK19E, and should provide some decent run times of around an hour of video or 440 images while using the viewfinder in its full mode. With the new battery comes a new battery grip, the DMW-BGS5, which is pretty much what you expect from a battery grip. Lastly, you have a 1/4" thread for attaching cages, tripod plates and other accessories. I've said this plenty of times, but I'll say it again. Stills camera makers, please put a second thread here. On the left, you have your I/O. You have USB-C for changing the battery, as well as power the camera with an external USB battery bank, which is really handy. We use this a lot as we only have one battery for the S5. You then have a 3.5mm microphone port, as well as a 3.5mm headphone output. The S5 mic import has the same -12 dB limit as the GH series of cameras, so this may be a little hot for some. I do wish that this was the same as the S1H. The position of the mic port is perfect if you're vlogging as well though, as you can completely turn the screen around and back and it doesn't block anything. Audio sounds as you expect from a camera like this. It's alright, but if you want better audio, I'd suggest picking up the XLR adapter I mentioned earlier. But for vlogging, the mic in is very usable. Lastly, you have a micro HDMI port. This is very abnormal from Panasonic. They are usually so great at putting full-size HDMI ports on their cameras. However, considering what this camera does pack into it, in its size, I think we can forgive them. The HDMI output doesn't seem to have much latency at all either. From the testing we did, it was only a few milliseconds. We will talk about the external recording options, however, in a bit. On the right, you have a dual card slot. Both slots are SD cards, but one is UHS 1 and one is UHS 2. As you expect from Panasonic, they have implemented the same recording abilities when it comes to taking advantage of the 2 slots. You have relay for not having to stop recordings to switch cards, backup recording, which allows you to record both the same video and photos to both cards at the same time. Lastly, you have allocation record, which allows you to choose different media types to separate cards. This will be handy for a lot of different scenarios. When it comes to which SD cards to use, the official Panasonic spec recommends at least class 4 or higher when recording MP4 under 28 megabits per second, and a UHS 1/2 UHS speed class 3 when recording video in MP4 in 4K, MOV, S&Q, 6K photo or 4K photo. But you don't really need to worry about superfast V60 or V90 SD cards here. Just make sure they are at least UHS 3 and you'll be fine. I've put some recommended media in the description below. You also have a 2.5mm remote port on this side too. The back seems to be a mix of the GH5 and the S1. It features a decent layout that feels great to operate. It also features a 3-inch 1.8 million dot fully articulating back screen. I prefer the design on this one over the previous offerings from Panasonic, but the S1H screen and the mechanics here are still my favourite. It feels solid but also easy to use. However, if you have anything plugged into any of the ports apart from the 3.5mm mic in, you will not be able to flip the monitor around. You have 3 dials for controlling exposure, as well as a joystick, which is really great to see on such a small camera. The EVF is a 2.36 million dot OLED EVF capable of switching between 120 and 60 frames per second. It may not be the highest resolution viewfinder on the market, but it does the job well. One other thing worth noting is how to change the setting of the back wheel. For this, you need to go into the third tab, then the third second tab, and then dial set. Once you're here, you can go down to control dial assignment, and here you can change what it does. But for me, I would put it as ISO so you can control all 3 exposure tools easily. Let's get into some tech specs. The S5 features the same full-frame 24.2 megapixel CMOS sensor as the S1H and the S1. However, one big difference between the S5 and the S1H is the lack of S1H's low-pass filter. This means that the S5 is more prone to aliasing than the S1H. However, it also means it features the same dual base ISO as the S1H, which in Vlog is 640 and 4000. However, one difference is with the S5, you cannot switch between these manually. It is done automatically. From what I can see, the base is changing when you hit 4000, which is a shame. The camera comes pre-installed with Vlog, unlike the S1, and in Vlog, the sensor is rated for 14 plus stops as dynamic range. Panasonic has gotten a lot of stick from people for their lackluster autofocus system over the past couple of years. This has meant that anyone who has autofocus at the top of their priority list has had to look away from Panasonic cameras. However, for people who manually focus, Panasonic offers a huge range of benefits over their competition. You have decent magnification and solid focus peaking. However, today with the S5, Panasonic have released an updated autofocus system that will also be coming to the S1H, S1 and S1R. Panasonic have stated that this new system has been designed from the ground up. However, it is still only contrast based, so let's see what it can do. You can access all of the autofocus modes by hitting the button on the focus mode dial. Here you have face, eye and body detection, tracking, 225 area, zone, vertical and horizontal, and zone oval, 1 area and 1 area plus. Within the menus, you can adjust the AF speed from -5 to +5 and AF sensitivity from -3 to +3. This allows you to choose how smoothly and fast the AF behaves. For these tests, however, I have maxed the speed out and the sensitivity out. For these tests, we recorded both internally and externally to a Ninja 5, with the HDMI being used and not being used. This is because Panasonic have said that using the HDMI makes the AF performance worse. We shot in face tracking mode first in 4K 42 10-bit 25p, as well as 4K 420 10-bit 50p. Because the AF system is still contrast based, 50p is more reliable than 25p, as the camera has twice the amount of frames to analyse, and this is the same in tracking mode as well as the normal focusing modes. In 50p, it performs well considering it is just contrast based. The one thing that Panasonic have done well here is the tracking algorithm. As you can see from the back of the monitor, it does a great job at tracking eyes, faces, heads, bodies. However, the issue is the speed it can process that information to movement of the lens focusing, and that's where the focus just falls apart. When this happens, you can see hunting and pulsing. In 25p, you can see this far more, which is a real shame, as I think most people will spend their time in sub 50p formats. The tracking mode also works really well in 50p, and again performs worse in the lower frame rates. the back monitor being touchscreen, you can use this with the AF in certain modes. You can move areas in face detect mode, the zone area modes, and in the one area modes. However, in tracking mode, you can move the focus point that you want to track. So yeah, vlogging's not really my thing, it's not really what I do, but I wanted to test how the autofocus tracked for vloggers, because obviously I know a lot of people are going to probably pick up this camera for that because of the size and the weight and the features it has. I'm not sure how good this is tracking me. I'm not moving too much, so it shouldn't be too bad. I mean, when I move it closer, you can see it's not the fastest thing in the world. So we're now vlogging in the studio, so I can be at f3.5 instead of like f11. I don't know how it's performing. What?
These antennas are so deep.
They are. Joe's filming some Z-cam B-roll. Look, it sees both. It sees your back of your head, mate. Look at that.
What do you mean?
Well, you can't see it when I see it,
like
but it can see the
track?
back of your head. It can track it, yeah. Unfortunately, with all of the improvements that Panasonic have claimed to have made with the S5, it really isn't reliable enough to trust all the time. But it is a huge step in the right direction when you compare it to the S1 and GH series, which were far worse. Panasonic, please, with your next camera release, please implement a contrast and phase hybrid system, as your tracking algorithms look really solid, but contrast systems can only do so much. Your cameras are so fantastic otherwise, and you deserve more people shooting on your systems. But I feel like this lackluster autofocus does put a lot of people off, which is a real shame. In the meantime, if you don't mind the issues with the autofocus and just want to shoot manual focus, this is a great option with the S5, and due to the short flange of L mount, you can adapt a range of amazing manual lenses that won't break the bank. The S5 features a decent range of formats. It has a really nice combination of different options, and you have 4K 4210-bit, which at this price point and sensor size is excellent, and something people have wanted at this price point for a while now. The main drawback I can see is all of these formats are IPB and there is no all-eye compression option, though I think their choice to do this will probably be for processing and thermal limitations. The footage still looks decent internally, but you can see the long goal compression. However, external recording is a solid option, as you can then shoot ProRes, which has great playback and detail. You can also capture 4K 60p, but this is in a cropped mode. However, if you want to capture 4K 30 and below, this uses the full sensor. Luckily, the external shooting options for this camera are very good. The quality of the larger bitrate codecs are decent, but the lower end ones, you are losing a lot of detail. The S5 can output 4K 60 and 4210-bit via its micro HDMI port. However, this is cropped, like the internal recording, and uncropped when you shoot at 30p and below. As well as this currently, later on down the road, Panasonic will be releasing a firmware update to unlock 5.9K 25p and 30, 4K 50 and 60p, and anamorphic 3.5K 50p, all in RAW, which you'll be able to capture with the Atomos Ninja 5. This is exactly what the S1H can do, and I'm interested to see what the image quality is like when you compare these two in this mode, as they both do share the same sensor. So, in theory, the image will be very, very close between the two. We will do an update video on this when the firmware is released. Of course, the S1H has some features that the S5 will not have. However, the S5 is also half the price of the S1H, so depending on what the image does look like, this could be a very compelling option for some people. The image currently out of the S5 into our Ninja 5 looks great, and if you just want to shoot ProRes, this is a great option right now. Panasonic have confirmed that they will be making the S5 even better with firmware and adding a few features that are missing from the GH series. We just spoke about the RAW update, and Panasonic will also be adding support for Cinema 4K internal recording, video assist function, vector scope tool, master pedestal adjustments, and shutter angle and gain operation modes. This is awesome to see, as these are a few things that I thought were missing in the camera, and it's good to see Panasonic wanting to add these features and make it more complete. Panasonic have pitched this camera as a hybrid camera, and that does make sense, as it is going up against the A7 III and the A7 IV when that makes an appearance, when it comes to both price and their feature sets. However, when you think of stills, most people don't instantly think of Panasonic, but that doesn't mean that this is a bad stills camera. The still quality out of this camera is pretty awesome, though after using the R5 for the past couple of weeks, I really do long for the snappy autofocus when taking images in a demanding environment like the Mali Mile. However, for more casual imagery, the autofocus is usable. So if you're happy with the AF performance, then you'll be able to use this camera absolutely fine as a primary hybrid. So with all the overheating stuff going on recently, Panasonic have been incredibly careful with this camera as well. Obviously this camera is much smaller than even the R5, but when you compare the design of this over the S1H, heat will be something people will question. This means that some of the modes are limited to 30 minutes of recording time. However, I did manage to run some tests and managed to record for hours without any issues at all. According to Panasonic, they test their recording heating and times at 40 degrees, which is higher than some of the competition. So them coming out and saying there may be limitations is probably them just being very conservative. During all my time with the camera, I haven't had any overheating signs or issues pop up at all. There is a range of different color modes on the S5 that you can choose from. You have standard, vivid, natural, flat, landscape, portrait, monochrome, L monochrome D, Cine-like D2, Cine-like V2, like 709, Vlog, like 2100 HLG, and 4 custom photo styles that you can create. Unlike previous Panasonic mirrorless cameras, the S5 features Vlog pre-installed, which if you want to get the most out of the camera is the mode to shoot in. However, the internal like 709 and like 2100 are both great options if you're wanting less to do in post. However, if you do want to shoot Vlog, I have put a few Vlog scientific LUTs in the description below. But my favourite way to process Vlog is to use a colour space transform in Resolve and then use red scientific LUTs. Panasonic arguably has some of the best stabilisation on the market. I was really impressed with the S1H when we tested that last year, and the S5 features similar IBIS to it. It has 5 stops of sensor stabilisation, which can go up to 6.5 with a compatible lens. However, I do think Sony and Canon have caught up in their most recent cameras, so now it's really close. The S5 features a time-lapse mode when you are in the stills mode. Within this, you can change between both a time-lapse mode and a stop-motion animation mode. Within this, you can then set whether you want to set an interval timer, choose when it starts, set how many images you want to capture, and the interval time between the shots. With stop motion, you can turn on auto shooting and then set the interval timer. The menu system is pretty much what you expect from Panasonic S-series camera. It's laid out pretty much the same as others and features the same Q menu, which gives you quick access to important settings. There are 2 different views for this, and you can even change what settings you see depending on if you are in stills or video mode. This means you can dial in exactly what you want to change and do so quickly. Anyway, the menu system is pretty standard, so I just want to focus on a couple of features within it. Let's start off looking at exposure assist tools that you have internally. You have a waveform that you can position across the back LCD, but you can't resize it like the S1H. You also have zebras, which are the same as the S1H, so you can set 2 different values. This would be good to set one for your highlights and one for your skin tones. This is a good improvement over some of the other previous S-series cameras. I do wish that we had a false color mode here, but picking up a monitor that has it nowadays is very affordable. The camera also features a range of focusing assist tools for when you are manual focusing. You have MF Assist, which is a really handy tool for making sure you get critical focus. Unfortunately, this doesn't work during recording, which I wish it did, but it will be a handy tool for getting focus before. In the menu, you can change a few parameters for this tool. You can either move the focus ring to activate this, double tap on the part of the screen you want to push into, hit the joystick or the AF mode button. You can also change whether you want the assist to be a picture-in-picture or full, depending on what you prefer. Arguably the most important focusing assist tool is peaking, and the S5 features the same peaking system as the previous S-series cameras. Here you can change the sensitivity of it, the color, and choose whether or not you would like to display the peaking while you are autofocusing. This does stay on while you are recording, which is what you expect. On the top of monitoring assists, the S5 also features a range of anamorphic formats, as well as the ability to de-squeeze both your monitor and your playback. With this de-squeeze, they have provided a good range of squeezes for whatever lens you want to use. We are using a 1.8 times anamorphic here from Vazen. This is great if you have an anamorphic lens you want to use or are looking to experiment with. With the ability to shoot Vlog and HLG, you also have view assist for both. In Vlog, you can select the default Vlog 709 LUT and even import and select from 4 internally stored LUTs. You can then choose if you want to output these LUTs onto the back of the monitor or out via the HDMI port. With Vlog, you also have the ability to load in LUTs into the camera. However, this isn't an easy process. Panasonic use VLT as their LUT format, which means you will have to either create VLT LUTs through Resolve or use a piece of software like LUTCalc to convert your favorite 3D or cube LUTs to VLT. Once you have this, you then have a few more hoops to jump through. You will need to copy the VLT onto the root of your SD card. and then rename it so the name is no longer than 3 letters. If it's longer, the camera will not see it. You can then eject your media, plug it into the camera, and then hop onto the second tab, head down to the monitor/display 3 page and click on Vlog View Assist. The Read LUT file option will allow you to now ingest the LUT, select your media type, the LUT you want to import, and then you can select which one of 4 slots you'd like to save it into. Once loaded, you can then head into your LUT, select and choose your LUT here. This gives you as much data to manipulate in post with the added benefit of being able to monitor in whatever LUT you would like. With HLG, you have the option to change your view assist based on whether or not you want to use the back monitor or HDMI. Within these options, you can choose between a few different modes, depending on what look you want. It also features a few other things that I will shout out quickly. It allows you to switch between NTSC and PAL. You have live cropping like the S1H for in-camera movements. You can set custom function buttons, shear overlay for stop motion, IS status scope, and with compatible lenses, you can change how it behaves. So if it's a focus by wire compatible lens, you can change if you want the focus throw to be linear or not, and a few other things. Also, one quick thing, when we received this unit, constant preview was off, and this means that you don't get a real-time representation of your exposure on your live view, so make sure it's on. Panasonic also recently released their LUMIX Tether piece of software, which allows you to control and capture your camera over USB and even use it for streaming, which is really handy. And this camera is compatible with that. Link to that down in the description. For our control test, we shot against the R5 and the A7S Mark III, though really, I wouldn't be comparing this camera to those given their price points. We recorded externally with the A7S Mark III and the S5 using the Ninja 5 in ProRes 422 and shot internal 8K RAW with the Canon R5. We've done a bunch of these tests in the past, so if there's a camera you want to see how it compares to, let me know in the comments below. With the S5, we shot from ISO 640 all the way up to 51,200 in Vlog. I would say that at 12,800, it's very usable. However, at 25,600, you are getting a large green cast and a bunch of noise. However, some time and resolve fixes this, and it can be salvaged because color is rendered very well. At 51,200, color is still rendered very well, but you have even more green cast and noise. I wouldn't use it at this point. Overall, this is very impressive. Not as good as the A7S Mark III, but pretty close to the performance of the S1H. For our underexposure test, we used a similar methodology to our normal tests. We grabbed a light meter and used the trusty waveform on the Ninja 5 to properly expose our chart and my skin, and then stop down our Zeiss Otus 55 down a stop at a time. We actually had the Nanlite 4s of 500 in the studio, and this light has made these tests so much easier because of its crazy output and color reproduction. When it comes to underexposure, the S5 manages similar performance to the S1H, which is unsurprising given its sensor. You can shoot 3 stops under and still have good performance. However, at 4, things start getting dicey, and at 5, I would say it's unusable. This is similar to the A7S III's performance. The R5 has much more noise, but more detail due to the lack of noise reduction. However, I think the S5 has a slight edge on the R5 slightly. For our overexposure test, we used the same technique as the underexposure tests, but lit for the lens closed down, and then opened up a stop at a time. The S5 manages +3 stops absolutely fine, but at 4 stops over, my skin has started to go and colours start to shift. This is very similar to the S1H test we did last year and the R5, but I think the A7S III handles +4 a little bit better when it comes to holding colour accuracy, but all are pretty close. When it comes to the colour science between the 3 cameras, we managed to match them very easily by using the colour space transform function in Resolve. However, if we use their own scientific LUTs, you can see quite a large difference. Colour science is very subjective, but I think Panasonic's colour science is actually really nice. Skin tones look really good here. For our high frame rate tests, we got out the espresso cup and some coffee beans, and that's what we shot. For these, we also shot with the A7S Mark III and the R5. With the S5, we shot at 4K 60 as well as 1080p 150 and 180. The half speed 4K looks great, and the 150 and 180 FPS stuff looks nice considering it's only HD. The high frame rate footage that we chose to shoot with the A7S III was both the 4K 120 All-I and the 1080p 240, both of which look absolutely fantastic. The R5 also features 4K 120, and this also looks pretty good. The only downside is that this is H.265, which means playback is pretty awful currently. It's great to see awesome slow motion across the board though. One thing I did notice, however, was that at 120 on the S5 you can use autofocus. However, at 150 you lose this, and then at 180 you have no AF and a Super 35 crop. You can tell the difference between the 4K footage and the HD, but for those times when you really need high frame rate options, this HD is absolutely fine. Unsurprisingly, the lack of an OLPF filter does mean that the S5 does suffer from some aliasing, which you can see on our chart here. I haven't measured the exact roll and shutter performance on the S5, but you can see some jello effect as you are panning, but it's not the worst I have ever seen and it's completely usable. The Panasonic S5 may not fit in with some of the other camera releases that have happened recently, but that doesn't mean it won't be a popular one. Given its price point, I can see a lot of people being really interested in the sub 2000 hybrid market. It has great internal formats for 4K 4210-bit and 4K 60, amazing external shooting options, which are only going to get better, similar image quality performance to the S1H, class-leading IBIS, and all the creature comforts you would come to expect from a Panasonic mirrorless camera. The autofocus still isn't quite at the point where it's going to be touching Canon or Sony, but it is better, and they have done a good job with what they can with a contrast-based system. Let us know what you think of the Panasonic S5 in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and make sure you hit the subscribe button and notification bell. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.